Unacceptable fringe. Unacceptable fringe. Unacceptable fringe. Unacceptable fringe.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. Welcome to the weekly wrap, our final weekly wrap here on the channel. Maybe I'm gonna get into that. Welcome to the stream. Xylo's jumped in, unhinged the Fringe. Let's get into that right off the bat, ladies and gentlemen, and let's do a little update as to what's happening on this channel. And again, we will talk about it multiple times for anybody who's maybe coming in a little later to get their information. Just a heads up, the reason this is going to be our last weekly wrap is because we have moved in our schedule. I will now be doing our show Friday nights here on the channel at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Central, and it's going to be Friday Night Fringe here on the channels. We're going to do that. So every Friday from now on at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central. Again, the show will be on YouTube instead of Sundays. I find that it's just a better time slot. I find it's a better evening to do our streams. More people are around, more people are interested, just getting off work, want to sit, want to hear and talk about politics. I think it's going to be great to have a show in that time slot. And I'm really looking forward to it. We tried it out this Friday, of course, with my dear friend Tamara Lich, and things went pretty well here on the channel. So we'll definitely be sticking with that format. Now, of course, anytime that I'm not around on a Friday, which is very rarely, of course, we will schedule streams probably for a Sunday to make up for those days. So Sunday will still be reserved for any weeks where we cannot do a Sunday night stream or a Friday night stream. I'm sorry. I know in March I'll be out of town, going to Winnipeg close to my birthday. I try to get out of town once a year at least, over to Manitoba to visit my mother's graveside and pay my respects. So I've already booked a trip out there for the beginning of March. And again, I'll be announcing in advance that Friday in particular, because I'll be gone, there will be no stream. But that Sunday when I return, of course, we'll sit down, we'll do a makeup stream. So Sundays will now be reserved for any time we have to do a makeup stream. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to the Fringe. As for the unhinged Fringe, I'm actually going to get some graphics done. And anytime I go on a rant from now on, that's going to be the segment of the stream. And we're going to call it, instead of, you know what really grinds my gears, we're going to be calling it the Unhinged Fringe. And boy, are we going to get into it, ladies and gents. Let's start with a roll call. That was a little deep of an explanation and a little bit of a time waster, but let's get into a roll call. Shout out in the chat. Let me know where you're from. Let's see if we can get one person from every province in the country in here. Let's see. Mike TV Dub joining in from good old Winnipeg. Welcome into the stream. Good to see you again. We've got Lucas C from Burnaby, BC. Welcome into the stream. Great to see you. Johnny Freak, I'm singing along. F. Trudeau, welcome into the stream. We've got Aaron Morrison. Oh, getting a Caesar ready for another good old Sunday show. Enjoy that Caesar. It's definitely a good night to have one. We got a lot of great stuff to talk about on the show tonight. What do we got? Who else do we got jumping in here? We've got Stefan M jumping in. How you doing? Welcome into the stream. We've got Margaret Tuckett or Luckett. I'm sorry. I thought that was a T. I got to start adjusting my lights because I've got a corner light that comes in right at the edge of my screen. And sometimes the light just makes text look like something it's not. For sure, Trudeau is mentally unstable. He runs on white powder and should be subjected to drug tests regularly. I would think that that job should require drug tests on the regular, regardless. I know that if you're going to work in a government job, usually you have to submit to drug tests. Why shouldn't the Prime Minister? Totally agree. We got Blackface Son of Castro jumping into the stream. I was beginning to think the show was not happening tonight. Glad to see everyone tonight. Hello from the Secret Trudeau bunker in Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia. Yeah, the show started a little bit late, and I apologize. I was so carried away with filming some content for this week, some extra content, that I got a little sidetracked and lost track of time. So my apologies. The folks that the show got started a few minutes later than usual. We've got Gordon jumping in from Three Hills, Alberta. Welcome into the stream. Good to see you. We've got Mike, Freedom Honey, Sunday Fun Day. Welcome into the stream. Great to see you, Mike. Thanks for joining us again this evening. Tammy Eldridge jumping in from Elliott Lake, Ontario. Welcome into the stream. We've got Aaron Mason joining us from Red Deer, Alberta. Good old Red Deer, one of my favorite towns in Alberta. Welcome into the stream. Johnny, of course, is joining us from good old Calgary, Alberta, my hometown. We've got Andy jumping in. Thanks for the great interview with Tamara. Hey, listen, Andy, I love sitting down with Tamara. It's always fun to have her on this channel, but I've always told Tamara that I find that a lot of people kind of cash in on her name and try to use her for a little bit of a bump when it comes to YouTube. So anytime that Tamara comes here, of course, like we did on Friday, it's just an open night for her to talk about basically whatever she wants. I like Tamara being laid back and feeling like this is just a place to be herself. And anytime that I see her, I really just like visiting. We're really good friends. I enjoy the time that I get with her. So it's always fun to have her here. I look forward to having her here in the future. But again, I don't try to put an obligation on that, but I do know that people like to hear from her. People on YouTube like to hear what she has to say. So I was really excited to have her in here on Friday. It was a lot of fun. And I can assure you, you'll definitely be seeing more of her on the channel as the days go on. But keep on the lookout. We'll also be updating you once her court proceedings are finished with, and maybe we see some channels in the works with her and Chris Barber. I'm looking forward to that. And of course, Mystical is jumping in live from the surface of the sun. You know, tell that sun to knock it off a little because the global boiling, we've had enough of that. Andy is joining us from Kingston, Ontario. We've got Margaret jumping in from Calgary, good old Cowtown, my town. Good to see you in here. T. Rich, I like Sunday. Oh, I'm sad. Don't be sad, T. Rich. You can still join us on Friday Night Fringe. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got Colin coming in from Duck Bay, Manitoba. I love Duck Bay. One thing Manitoba is really known for, and if you ever go through Manitoba, if you're not from there, is the lakes. When I left Winnipeg, that was one of the things I missed the most was going up to the cottage for the summer, getting on a boat, doing some fishing, doing some tubing, water skiing, all of it. It's lake country. Boy, do they have nice beaches in Manitoba. Great province. Love Manitoba. Um, T. Rich is coming in from the mountains of Alberta. Wow, that's impressive. Views I hear are amazing. I love the mountains. Margaret coming in London, Ontario, formerly Lethbridge. Oh no, you left for Ontario. Oh, Margaret, what happened? Welcome into the stream. It's good to see you. We've got Robert jumping in from Merritt, BC. There we go. Welcome into the stream. Good to see you. We've got let's see, a lot of chat going on here. I'm trying to get through it so we can make sure we get in here. Gordon's jumped in. I downloaded Tamara's audiobook Friday night and had Tamara read to me till after 3 a.m. Let me tell you something. There's nothing better than falling asleep to the sound of Tamara's voice. I've done that while drinking a few times, and I'll tell you, the hangover is less severe in the morning. But I'm glad you enjoyed your audiobook, Gordon. Appreciate you doing that. I'm sure Tamara enjoys or is happy that you enjoyed your book. She definitely watches the streams and catches up, so she'll be keeping an eye out for that. We've got Verisma coming in from Shawinigan Lake in BC. Welcome into the stream. It's great to see you. What do we got here? What do we got? I know people are talking about Tamara and her book, and I couldn't agree more on the comments, guys. I just got to catch up. Let's see. We've got Christina jumping in from London, Ontario. Welcome into the stream. Mike TV Dub is saying Grand Beach, Manitoba is amazing. It is absolutely incredible. I have family in Grand Beach, and I always try to get out there every summer if I can. But again, I'll be going out in March this year just because of what I want to do with my kids this summer. I want to get them into the U.S. For some good old vacation time. So I'll be doing a solo trip out there with the wife, I guess. So technically not solo in March. Nice little getaway for the weekend though with the wife. It'll be nice. We've got Death Valley National Park recorded high temperatures of 143 Fahrenheit in 1913. Now it's about 120ish. Yeah, I get it. We're gonna get into that tonight. It's gonna be good. Mystical's jumping in. Listening to an audiobook by Christy Freeland is going to give you nightmares. Yes, I think listening to anything Christy Freeland saying will give you nightmares. Tammy saying, I liked your stream being on Sunday because Clyde is also on Friday, so I'm going to have to choose. That's okay. People are free to go wherever they want. The thing was, as I was looking at scheduling, part of the problem and part of the thing that I struggle with the most in keeping up with this YouTube channel is YouTube was always a passion of mine. When I had the opportunity to get my foot in the door and start a YouTube channel, I really jumped on it because before YouTube, I was actually on Twitch for almost 4 years streaming retro gaming. And of course, Twitch, unless you're, in a bikini and in a hot tub, which nobody wants to see that from me, you just can't get anywhere on Twitch. So I was happy to get onto YouTube, but now that I've kind of bit off more than I can chew and jumped into this mayoral race, between writing new books, between YouTube, between all the work that I do getting this mayoral campaign started, I don't have a lot of time for family. So I found that by doing Friday nights, it gives me Saturday and Sunday with my wife, my kids. We're all off at the same time that way. And I got to put family first. I got to devote some time to my family. And Sunday nights are typically, kids doing baths, getting ready for school, folding laundry, packing backpacks for the next day at school. I really hate leaving all of that on my wife's shoulders before she gets up to go to her job in the morning on Fridays or Mondays, I should say. So this was a way for me to kind of balance it out and still be here for everybody and still do a live show. Because we'd been talking for a long time about maybe cutting off the Sunday night show in order to spend that time. But I love this community. I've said numbers of times how great this community is. And boy, it's still growing at such a speedy rate. I still want to come in here and talk with you guys. I still want to do these videos. So that was the I guess the sacrifice that had to be made. And Fridays just seemed to work, and we tested it out on Friday night with Tamara, and things worked well. So that's where we're going to be. That's where we're going to be. Let's jump in. When are we having our farmers protest starting? Soon, I hope, but you never know. I mean, the Emergencies Act would come along, bank accounts would be frozen. Where in the USA are you planning to go? I might go to Great Falls in the summer. Great Falls is a nice place to visit if you want to do a lot of shopping. If the dollar's good, which right now it isn't. I was planning. So one thing that caught my kids' attention last year, and we almost wanted to do a 2-in-1 when we did Disney in September. My kids have been watching a lot of videos on YouTube, and they've caught this Great Wolf Lodge that a lot of people go to. And I know they have one in Niagara Falls. The closest to us is, I think it's called Grand Mound, Washington, which is just south of Seattle. So I looked at it with the wife and said, we could drive there, but the cost to stay there is really high for what you're getting. It's essentially just an indoor water park and kids resort. It's a hotel for kids. It's a resort for kids. So we wanted to do something along those lines, but then I started looking around at where the locations are in the United States. And of course, Minnesota has one in Minneapolis next to the Mall of America. And of course, my wife, twist her rubber arm, she wants to go get some school stuff for the kids for next year at the Mall of America. And there were some deals to go out that way. So I said to her, as long as those deals continue to stay there, maybe we'll do Great Wolf Lodge and we'll fly out and we'll see Mall of America and take the kids out for a few days and just kind of have some mindless fun, get them in the theme park there. I've been to the Mall of America when it first opened in the mid 90s, early to mid 90s. My father took us there. It was what was called the soft launch, and their theme park at the time used to be themed around the Peanuts gang. It was called Knott's Camp Snoopy, of course, after Knott's Berry Farm. Now, since then, Nickelodeon has bought the license of the theme park. It's changed unbelievably since it first opened, and I'd like to go back and see what's going on there and what it's turned into. But I think that'd be a fun summer holiday because the kids get their time and then my wife gets her fun. I hear there's an aquarium at that mall. There's a lot of stuff to see. It'll be a lot of fun. Mall of America isn't safe. Well, I've heard mixed things, but again, I think it depends on when you go. Mike TV Dub jumping in with buying a book. Now, I will state before we get too far into the stream, the bookstore is shutting down. I did mention this on Friday. This was a temporary thing that I set up over the Christmas season. The cost of operating this site when it's not really active, again, a lot of people did it for Christmas gifts. So the site is shutting down on February 25th. So you have until then to grab whatever's left of our inventory. Sadly, I won't be ordering any new inventory because if it doesn't leave, I'm stuck with it. So the site right now, I believe Tamara's book is sold out. I don't know if any other books have sold out of being able to be purchased. But if you want a signed book from me, the prices have been lowered. They are on clearance. I'm essentially taking a loss just to get them out of my hands. So pick up your books. They do include Canada-wide free shipping with your purchase, as well as a signed copy of those books. So head over to unacceptablefringebooks.com right now and grab your copies before it's too late. Once the 25th hits, I'm afraid there's nothing else I can do. But hey, let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this stream and get into what we wanted to talk about. Justin Trudeau. This week, We talked about Pierre Poilievre and how he called Justin Trudeau unhinged from his little rant. Uh, you notice again, and we talked about it in the video, that anytime Justin Trudeau, this happened when he was talking about standing for a white Christmas, if you guys remember that. And we're going to segue into something else from that. But Justin Trudeau, anytime the Liberals start to applaud him, it starts out with one or with two people applauding him. And then all of a sudden the applauds get a little bit louder and they think, hey, this is a good time to back what he's saying because he's virtue signaling so hard right now. And it seems like he just gets louder and louder and more dramatic. You can tell this man is a drama teacher because he gets really passionate about what he's saying. And he starts with the fist bumping and the shaking while he's talking. Uh, but of course, he got into it with Pierre, and Pierre shut him down instantly. What a sight to behold. I mean, this is one of the things I love seeing when Parliament returns is that the content that's going to be here, ladies and gentlemen. It seems like a lot of people like the content when we point out these gaffes, when we point out the funnier stuff. So buckle up because we're going to have lots of content coming on top of the content I already cover, showcasing just how stupid this prime minister is, as well as um, a lot of hijinks that he's pulling off. And boy, I've got some good stories coming for you this week. When you talk about a white Christmas, I don't know, is there anybody in the chat who's in from Nova Scotia? I guess I'd seen on the CBC there was a talk of how Nova Scotia, at least CBC and the prostitutes over at that organization, cannot believe that Nova Scotia is getting a winter storm in February. This is what news outlets want to talk about these days. Now, don't get me wrong. There is a significant amount of snow dropping in Nova Scotia, but it's nothing to be alarmed about. Um, they're talking about upwards of 5 feet. Now, I think back into Calgary, and I remember in 1998, I had literally just turned 18. Um, my birthday's on the 13th of March, and on St. Patrick's Day, I was supposed to go out with friends for my first kind of real bar trip since turning 18. And on the 17th of March, we got this dump of snow that was similar, about 5 feet overnight. Schools were shut down. A lot of people stayed home from work. I spent the day with my father digging out the driveway. So these kind of things happen. These snowstorms happen. When I grew up living in Winnipeg, I mean, in the 80s, we used to see big snow dumps like this all the time, and the kids would be out running around. We used to, in our neighborhoods, stack up like a lot of houses in our neighborhood that didn't have garages. You'd always go to the kid's house who didn't have a garage because it was just like a parking pad at the side of the house. And if the parents didn't have two vehicles, well, a lot of the kids would get up on the roof with a ladder and jump off the roof into the snow. It was that deep. And it used to be fun growing up. That used to be how we had our fun, how we enjoyed our time. Um, when you hear about CBC going off on these reports that, oh my God, snow, it's you hear the mayor of Nova Scotia, or not the mayor of Nova Scotia, the mayor of whichever city in Nova Scotia they were talking about. Um, she was, I believe, I don't know if it was Dartmouth or where she was coming in from, but on this report, but she's saying like we're undersupplied, we're not prepared for this kind of snow, and it's like, but we're in Canada. You're in Nova Scotia. Like there's snow every year. How are you not prepared for a significant snowfall? One of the subjects they touch on in this report is the arson that happened over the summer, and they say, "Well, we've seen with these flash fires and flooding and snow falling now. Like you guys can't catch a break." And it's like, hold on here, hold on. The forests aren't just engulfing in flames. In fact, a report released not too long ago stating that somebody who was arrested was responsible for something about 70 or 70 some odd percent of the fires that were going on in that region of the country. It's arson, ladies and gentlemen. That's not global boiling. That's arson. Um, what Master Snatch is chiming in here. They said all their snow equipment, the government's official policy is global boiling. So, like, who does that? Who says let's get rid of all the equipment? Let's. Oh God, we focus on so many negative things on this channel, but it brings a smile to my face. Not because people in Nova Scotia are suffering. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very sorry. If you're living in Nova Scotia and you're dealing with the snow, I'm sorry. I'm really not trying to laugh at your misfortune. I'm laughing at the stupidity of the media. My parents used to sit in front of the television every night when I was a kid, and the news was important. When I was a kid, again, in the olden days, growing up in the 1980s, I remember how exciting it was when we got, I think it was a 13-inch television on a TV stand in the corner of our kitchen, so my parents could watch the news right after dinner or while we were doing dishes, so that they didn't miss anything on the evening news, because the news used to be an accurate source for getting your information. But it seems like in the last, I don't know, 8 to 10 years, all of a sudden the news just flip flopped and started saying, hey, we're going to take payouts like sponsorships from governments and twist everything we get to our narrative. It's, I always knew there was some kind of trickery in the news because, as they've said, even back when I was a kid, there's no good news like bad news. Bad news sells. Drama sells. Destruction sells. Panic sells. You tell people, hey, we saw a squirrel in the park today. Nobody's going to care. But when you get onto, you know, government mandates and taxation and new policy coming out, or what's going to affect your day-to-day life, people losing jobs in your city, economy problems, housing problems, those things were important to get from the news. Now it's, hey, we got rid of all of our snow equipment and we can't figure out what to do because of all this climate change. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's just so sad that this is where we've ended up. But I do take a little bit of pleasure in laughing at, this is where we are in the world right now. This is where we've ended up. We're no longer able, and we haven't been able for a long time, to depend on the media for accurate news, or news that's worth our time. Arson was the cause of a lot of fires here in Alberta. Arson was the cause for the majority of fires we saw across the country last year. These are paid activists that were told by, what do they call this? Special interest groups like the Tide Foundation or the Tide Corporation. I don't know if it's foundation or corporation, whichever it is, whichever Tide is. Um, they're paid people to come in and do this destruction. And most of the time, it's these idiots that believe that if they cause the destruction, people will open their eyes and see. But they're also happy to get their hush money from these special interest groups because, ladies and gentlemen, they're the ones that make all the money when this goes down. That's why I've always said on our news stories, follow the money. This isn't about climate change. This is about making people rich. This was what happened during lockdowns. Did you know that the Canadian government owns the patent on the vaccines that were given? Or something to do with the patent, that Justin Trudeau's net worth, let this sink in, and we've talked about this before. His net worth was $9 million when he took the job as Prime Minister of Canada. He makes 300 and something thousand dollars a year. His net worth is now $100 million. Coincidence? I don't think so. Oh, where are we at? We used to have Okanagan Lake freeze over, but for 50 years, it ain't doing it anymore. Okay, well, things change. Here's a fun fact, and I've talked about this before on the channel. Did you know that Alberta, back in the Cretaceous period, during the days of the dinosaurs, Alberta and British Columbia were tropical climates? Um, we get snow now, and we've been getting snow for hundreds of years. Before the automobile existed, before fracking existed, before plastic bags existed, the world changes. Is anybody here familiar with what's been told as a continental drift theory? That when you look at the different stages of the Earth, Pangea, all the continents fitting together in one big supercontinent, and over the millions of years they've separated and the planet is always changing. The solar system is always changing. That is actual science, not other things that the government likes to say when they say we are the science. The world is always going to change. Things are always going to change. It does take time. But to pretend that we're going to suddenly see the world change because we paid more taxes, How does that work? You're exactly at the point telling the chat that Justin Trudeau is a dirty thief. Well, he is a dirty thief. He is a dirty thief. What would you call it? CB saying we can pay to stop it. We can. Ladies and gentlemen, here's what we should do. Get a tent, leave your home, file for bankruptcy, keep your job, get a heat pump, funnel that into your tent somehow, and let's all live in tents. Let's have tent colonies, and we'll just work and pay all of our money. It's like giving your money to a church. We'll just give it all to the government and say, here, fix the environment, please. Because if they fix the environment, we can afford to live outside all year round because we won't see, hot summers where our country burns down, and we won't see cold winters anymore because they can just flick the switch and decide what the weather's going to be like, right? Isn't that how it works? Clown piss jumping in China. But Greta says we were all going to die in 12 years if we don't stop the CO2 pollution. That date came and went. We're still here. How dare you? If you want to stop global warming or now global boiling, like and subscribe to Unacceptable Fringe. That's how you truly stop it, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you guys know this. Have you ever heard of the Greek god of Atlas who carried the weight of the world above his head? I keep this universe spinning at all times. Anytime the planet does a rotation around the sun, you're welcome. So if you want the weather to change, subscribe, like, and subscribe. I'm holding the world hostage at this point. Okay. I want untethered amounts of success on YouTube in exchange for fixing the weather. And we'll get it. See, that's what talking with no logic will get you. That's what no logic at all will get you. One thing I wanted to get into tonight. I don't know how you guys are feeling. I'm feeling a little jittery, and I'm feeling it's time for a little bit of unhinged fringe here on the channel. I think it's time we talk a little bit about what's been going on this weekend in Alberta that I really want to get into because I can't get into this very much on a video. You guys want to rant? Oh, buckle up. We're going to have a rant right now. This weekend in Calgary, I can't really maximize this anymore, but Rebel News showing a protest of about 300 people in the middle of Silly Hall in Calgary, where people are complaining about Danielle Smith. Danielle Smith and her new rules for castrating your children. Now, I want to showcase this. Now, we don't really get audio. For some reason, I can't get audio on StreamYard. I don't know why we can't get audio on StreamYard. But Napoleon Dynamite, Janice Irwin was out with Rachel Notley. Wasn't Rachel Notley leaving? I thought she was getting the hell out of here. Good old Viva Fry teaming out. Before I call you a groomer, Janice Irwin, when you said to all the queer and trans youth out there, we love you so much. You were referring to people above the age of 18, right? You're not grooming children when you said that, were you? Janice Irwin is, well, she at least strikes me as somebody who is a PDF file. Danielle Smith came out last week, and I'm sure a lot of people missed the video because for some reason, YouTube decided to bury it in the algorithm. I don't know why. But Danielle Smith coming out to announce new measures for people who wish to transition. I'm going to go off right away by saying, right at the start of this, I don't care what you do in the comfort of your own home. I say this all the time, but I have to put these warnings out there in case YouTube wants to say this is hate speech. What you do in the comfort of your own home, under the walls of your own house, is your business. How you see yourself, how you sexualize yourself, the partners you sleep with, whatever you do in your life is your business. It's not the government's job to tell you what you can and cannot do to your body. I don't care if it's a pandemic. I don't care if we're talking about children. I don't care if we're talking about procedures in hospitals. It is not the government's responsibility to tell you what to do in your home, with your life, with your body, with your finances. It's the government's job to pass policy that's going to benefit the people that live in the country, city, or province that they represent. They're to decide what your taxes are. They're to build roads. They're to build hospitals. They're to create jobs. They're to focus on the economy. They're to keep the country moving. It's not their job to tell you what to do with your body. Of course, Danielle Smith stepping up saying, enough of this. No more. If you're under the age of 17, you cannot in Alberta take puberty blockers. A doctor cannot prescribe them. If you go to a school and say that you have pronouns, your parents must be informed. The school must inform the families. You cannot get genital mutilation if you're under the age of 17. Why? Because this is an important decision. Now, 15 years ago, I'd never heard of this kind of thing happening. If I did, it was very seldom. Like somebody was so into their self-identification that they went ahead and went on with some obscure surgery, but they didn't come out in public and really talk about it. They didn't want to. They kept to themselves. They kept within their community of people. The problem now is this has become a trend. It's become a thing that like the barbed wire tattoo on the bicep in the 90s, where it's like, hey, we're gonna do something radical and everyone's gonna jump on board. Yeah, man, it's so cool. You're convincing children at a young age to alter their bodies, to alter their genetics, to stop procreating. And they always say, well, these kids are confused. They don't know. They don't know what they want. Let them grow up and figure it out for themselves. If their families aren't supportive, if there's abuse happening in the home, allow help to intervene, allow the children to go request some form of protection from an abusive home. But it is not the place of the government to say that we're going to force this onto children because of the very few people that have that situation at home. There are kids that get abused out there that aren't trans. There's kids who go home to alcoholic parents who smack them around, who do drugs in front of them, who abuse their families, who abuse their mothers, abuse the fathers. I'll even turn it around. Nobody's concerned about those families. It's just ones that they can alter genetically. It's the ones they want to turn into a freak show. That's the problem. Of course, failed woke Mayor Jody Gondek coming out saying, "Oh, we're not going to stand behind this. We don't like this." Why? Because she has a trans kid at home. Conflict of interest. She's bringing her home life into her job. You can't do that. So Danielle Smith, of course, putting out the rules and saying that even in sports, she doesn't agree with biological men posing as women, competing with other women, and making it essentially a waste of time for them to train and interact in sports activity. So she says we're going to have a separate league for strictly women. And everybody's all, well, she's a terrible human being. She's phobic. Look at the behavior of this country. Now, of course, Marcy Ian. Do you guys remember Marcy Ian? She used to have a show on the news in Toronto. I think it was Canada AM. She used to be on before she was a Liberal MP and sat behind Justin Trudeau in the House of Commons before she sold her soul to the devil himself. I mean, she used to be a prostitute, but still. Marcy Ian blocking me on Twitter this week because she puts out a tweet the day after saying her and Justin Trudeau were up until the wee hours of the morning consoling children about what happened. First off, get away from our kids. You don't need to console anybody. Secondly, she blocked me because I asked, am I to believe you're going to give these puberty blockers to your children, Marcy? Ask an MP that next time they want to talk about these things. Next time they want to say, hey, this is what's right for children. When Rachel Notley comes out and says, oh, I want to stand up for all the trans kids in the province. because this is unfair that Danielle Smith says you have to wait until you're a fully developed and rational thinking adult to make these decisions. How dare she? Somebody should ask Rachel Notley, are you going to give puberty blockers to your children? Are you going to ask your kids to cut off their genitals? Is Marcy Ian going to take her kids for trans surgery? I don't think so. Because this isn't about beliefs. This is a grift. This is about population control. It's about taking our children and making them so weakened, taking away their identity. If you look at the structure of government, we can tell you to stay in your home. We can freeze your bank accounts. We can decide what you're going to put in your body. We can tell you when you should stop having families or producing children and that you should cut off your bits. They want control over your lives. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting that PDF files like Janice Irwin stand outside and put on this fake cry. I'll remind you to go look at Janice Irwin's Twitter at some point. The amount of virtue signaling and fake crocodile tears she has on her Twitter profile is downright disgusting. It's so phony. It's not even funny. She sat there. She was the one who started saying housing's a human right, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give the homeless free houses. She is such a virtue signaling moron, and I've challenged her numerous times. Come on this channel and debate me. Janice Irwin, who doesn't have children, who's telling everybody else what their children should be doing. Keep your mitts off our kids. Nahid Nenshi standing up in Calgary saying, I had this terrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. Again, a man who doesn't have children saying what's best for children. I'm not saying that's a prerequisite to decide. But they want control. Whining maggots. God, I got to stop being so unhinged because I'm really passionate about this. I hate this. I hate what's happening. I hate what's happening to our country. Enough is enough. When these people protest, when all this, they've got a right to protest. They've got a right to share their feelings. And the reason I'm going to say that is because they've said that we don't have that right. In Calgary, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, there's a bylaw that all these folks that I showed you at City Hall, these 300 and some odd people who were standing outside in City Hall while Nenshi said he had a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach, they're allowed to protest this. But because we disagree with it in Calgary, there is an actual law that stops us from protesting on the other side because they don't agree with it. That's censorship. That's censorship in Calgary. That's censorship in our country. That's not listening or following the Charter of Rights. You're not allowed to protest what I don't like. I will freely say they can protest whatever nonsense they want to. I hate to say this to any trans person. Facts don't care about your feelings. It doesn't matter whether you take puberty blockers, whether you cut your junk off, whether you put your makeup on, whether you wear a dress when you're a man, or whether you wear lumberjack clothing as a woman, trying to be a man. Facts don't care about your feelings. Science is science. When scientists find your bones in 100 years, or 300 years, or 1,000 years, or 10,000 years, or whatever's left of it from dust, they're going to be able to pull your DNA and extract it and say, this person was male, this person was female. There's two genders on this planet. Any of these people, I'd ask them, what is a woman? And anytime one of these sick, disgusting politicians wants to come forward, they're either PDF files or they're enablers. And they want to sit there and say, well, this is what's best for kids in this country. Give them to your kids first. Let's see you put your money where your mouth is. Let's see you mutilate your children. Then we can come to the table and talk about this. If they believe the Kool-Aid that they're asking you to drink, have them take a sip from the same cup first. Then we'll get into it. Monsters. Absolute monsters. What really scares me about this is that Nahid Nenshit is now talking about running for the leadership of the NDPs in Alberta because Rachel Notley's on her way out. I had high hopes it was going to be Janice Irwin because, quite frankly, the jokes don't write themselves, or the jokes do write themselves, I should say. I was looking forward to just roasting her as soon as that happened because she wouldn't stand a snowball's chance in hell of getting any kind of a mandate of leadership in terms of a provincial party. But if Nahid Nenshi, Muslim, not that there's anything wrong with that, and here's the Jerry Seinfeld, no, that there's anything wrong with that. The problem with him running as a Muslim mayor is that that's what won him the vote in Calgary. The Muslims vote for their own. And it's not a racial statement. They were calling the elections before they even got to the other three quarters of the city. The majority of the Muslim population in Calgary lived in the Northeast, and they would just go through the Northeast ballots. The majority of the population, because of the Muslim community, lived in the Northeast section of Calgary. And every election year that Nahid Nenshi ran, they were able to call the election before they even got to the other three quadrants of the city because he got the Muslim vote. Now, what do you think is going to happen in Alberta if Nahid Nenshi runs for that party and goes up against Danielle Smith? This is where a lot of people say, I don't have to vote. My vote doesn't mean anything. If you live in Alberta, if you saw the last provincial election, your vote meant a hell of a lot. And it was razor thin, down to the wire. There was no clear win for Danielle Smith in that election. I, for one, applaud Danielle for what she did coming out to protect our children. Parents should be able to decide what's best for their kids until they're adults. We are their guardians. We are their legal guardians until they're 18 years of age. I'm telling you right now, I love my kids. I would give them the shirt off my back. I would do anything for my children. And I feel a great swell of pity for the government official, the activist, the protester, anyone that wants to come to my door and threaten my children. I would go to jail for my kids in a heartbeat. And just about anybody watching this show, I'm willing to bet would do the same thing. And it is a travesty what's happening in this country that countless MPs in the government have spent this week blaming Danielle Smith and bringing in words like MAGA because, oh, she's such a horrible person for looking out for what's best for families, for thinking that the government doesn't have a right to tell families what to do with their kids. Muslims don't go for trans, says the Justice Warrior. Yeah, but Nenshi has support is the problem. When you look at the thin margins of the last election, is what I'm saying. If you were to take the last election between Danielle Smith and Rachel Notley and compare that to the level of support that Nahid Nenshi has, there was a lot of areas in Calgary that voted blue. And a lot of areas in Calgary voted for Nenshi when he was mayor. What do you think is going to happen in the next provincial election? It's I hate that these lunatics have overrun politics so much that I feel like I'm living in a bad movie. Like, doesn't anybody else feel that way? Like, some of the things that have happened in the last 5 years, if somebody had come from a time machine in like 2010, 2005 and told me that this is where we'd be in 2020, 2024, I'd say you're bananas. Like, that sounds like something out of a bad movie. Are you out of your mind? But the fact that so many of us sit back right now and say, yeah, my vote doesn't matter. Yes, it does. When you look at the federal election, there's aspects of the elections that don't matter in terms of how a prime minister is selected. But there's a number of things you vote for when you go to cast your ballot in a federal election. You're voting in the MP that's going to sit in that seat for that party. You're voting in a majority or a minority government. Even if your party loses, they're winning if your representatives have good ideas and are sitting in those positions to push for the people of those ridings and what they feel is within their best interests. Manitoba, we talked about this on the last stream. Manitoba had 6% of its eligible voters cast a ballot in the last provincial election. Now look who's running the province. A wife-beating NDP Marxist is running Manitoba. And he's going to run. You think your taxes are high now, Manitoba? Just wait. Just wait. That man will run the province into the ground even further than it already is. And I hate seeing it because Winnipeg, I grew up in Winnipeg. It's my home. I was born there. I love Winnipeg. I love my Jets. But people got to start getting out to vote. In Calgary, we have an installed mayor that received an influx of influential money at the 11th hour and skyrocketed ahead candidates like Kevin Farkas and won with 175,000 votes. Not 175,000 over Kevin Farkas, 175,000 total out of a city of 1.7 million people. That's embarrassing. And I know people, well, my wife knows people that said, well, I voted for Jyoti Gondek because she's a woman. She's an independent woman who don't need no man. Look where we are. Clown world. If I stand any chance of securing the mayor's seat in Calgary, the uphill battle isn't running against Jyoti Gondek. She's made that a very easy run. The problem is convincing 500,000 Calgarians to get off their butts and cast a ballot. That's going to be the challenge. Being out there, hitting the streets, telling people, please, for the love of Christ, get off your ass and go and vote. It's so important. The only premier to stand up for what is right in the entire country. Yeah, she is. She is. And she's getting skewered for it. And that should tell people something about where we are in a country setting right now. In a political setting, the people making the right choices are the ones that are getting crucified. What about Justin Trudeau and his ArriveCAN debacle? What was it Pierre said last week that $30 million went out to people who did zero work? Zero work. It was all just beneficial money being handed out to friends. I think that's what it was. It was a large amount regardless. I'm just saying that it's speculation on the amount that I gave because I know somebody will probably correct me, but it's embarrassing. People should be outside that prime minister's office every single day with signs, screaming, yelling, sending letters, flooding their inboxes, flooding their phone lines, demanding his resignation. The problem with our landscape right now, if you go back, if you look at the Paul Martin days, look at Jean Chrétien. Do you think either of them would have got away with half, a quarter? Do you think they would have got away with a quarter of the nonsense Justin Trudeau has put forward? A federal judge ruled that the Emergencies Act was illegal, and nothing has happened to Justin Trudeau. How? How is this possible? He's not bulletproof. Trudeau has to be forced to pay back our money he's stolen from taxpayers. After the money he's got from nanotech company, he could totally afford it. Well, 55%. I beg. I know it's not that high. Do you have a link that you can post, Rick? Because I was told it was like 6%. I watched other broadcasts from Manitoba. Jules, it's Twilight Zone. Somebody's looking at the background. That's one of my favorite pinball tables. I love that. I love that game. In fact, I was playing that earlier. Part of the reason I don't know if people notice every time I'm making videos, the tables usually change because I try to get as much time in my arcade as I can, which is usually just before I set up my equipment to either film videos or do a live stream. Um, Here we go. Loblaws Millions. I don't agree with the retailers. I don't agree with a lot of the shenanigans that goes on with the Westons and things like that. But again, the finger shouldn't be pointed at the retailers. It starts at the government. Anytime the government says it's the retailers, it's a distraction. They're distracting you. Do you guys remember who was that woman, that top press person for the prime minister, whoever it was, who went on like a screaming rant and used graphic language on Twitter about reaching sexual apexes and had no repercussions? Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it. I don't see it. It was an East Indian girl, who's a top advisor for Trudeau or something, who gave some and the funny thing is this was all happening while Justin Trudeau's emails were being locked down from the communications of his Christmas vacation to Jamaica. And people were covering stories on YouTube about, look what this girl said. Look, she's a top advisor to Trudeau, or a top a top worker of Trudeau's or something. I'm sorry, I'm fuzzy on it because it was so long ago. I've covered, like, ladies and gentlemen, I filmed some of the content for the week ahead of schedule, so I've covered about 5 different stories before this stream, so my head's a little fuzzy on it. Um, it's Blackface Son of Castro saying, I don't recall her name, but her language was atrocious. So here's the problem. Tucker Carlson comes to Alberta to do a show to talk to Danielle Smith, and the Liberals go out with Stephen Guilbeault and his little sad dog face. Oh, they talked bad about me, okay? And they said all these bad things about the environment, okay? And they whine and piss and moan about Tucker. Danielle's a Nazi, this, that, and the other thing. And then this advisor to Trudeau comes online and starts attacking journalists and making derogatory sexual statements about them and saying vile dialect, and nothing comes of that. The Liberal government won't apologize because they don't care. It's a distraction. It's a nothing burger. Derek does a killer, Mr. Mackey. I'm good. Drugs are bad. Drugs are bad. I'm good. Any of these YouTubers, and I'm not going to downplay any YouTuber or talk smack about them for covering it. People got to cover content. I cover low hanging fruit sometimes on the channel, and we've got even some coming this week. I'm not going to lie. Those things are good for the channel. Sometimes they're informative if people have been out of the loop. But the problem with low hanging fruit, and the thing that I never see mentioned in any of these YouTubers' videos, is this is a distraction. This is here for the sole purpose of taking your attention off of what's being done. Have you ever heard of how a magic trick is done? There's usually a process called sleight of hand that is done during a magic trick, where a magician will make your eyes move up here while he's doing something down here. And the reason for that distraction is so that you don't see how the trick is done. It's the same thing in the government. well, we're not going to take any actions against this girl because we're just going to let it ride out in the news. We're going to let Twitter blow up about it. We're going to let YouTubers cover all that stuff because then we don't have to censor the news while we bury emails that criminalize the prime minister. I've posted a better link. It's 55%. Okay, well, I'll check it out, Rick. I appreciate it. I was told it was somewhere in the vicinity of 6 to 12%. Um, here it is. Here it is. Her name was Supriya Dwivedi. I hope I pronounced that right. Yeah, Supriya Dwivedi, and her malicious comments. I'm not even going to put them up on the stream because they were very sexual. She talked about a guy not being able to make his wife climax and all these other things. I just think it's disgusting, especially when you're on Twitter and you're representing the government of Canada. There's a rhetoric that has to take place. There's rules of engagement, and she clearly violated them, and there should have been repercussions for that. If I went into, let's say I got a job as the spokesperson of Nike, and next week I go out and say, "Hey, I approve of child porn." Now I don't, but I'm using this as a rhetoric example. Now that company would have the right at that point to say, "Hey, you can't say those things. We're cutting ties with you," and they would because it's bad for their image. The government should have to either um, give this woman some form of repercussion for what she did and punishment for her words, and completely disavow what she has said, or when they don't do it, you should realize again, this is intentional. This is part of their scam. I wonder how they talk to each other in the office. So it's curious that you say that because a lot of things go on in the background that you never see. If you follow the news, we talked about this last week, and again, it's not really um, political focused, but it's important to bring up because you look at something that's going on even in the United States with former WWE chairman Vince McMahon. If you haven't heard about his lawsuit, he trafficked an employee to other wrestlers and partners in his business for multiple years and went as far as to defecate on her head during a three-way with another board member. And then offered her $3 million in hush money and only paid $1 million, which resulted in his lawsuit. There's some weird stuff that goes on. And again, normally I would say, I'm not going to buy into that until I see it in a courtroom, but there's text messages that have come out in the legal suit. There's proof. There is proof that money was transferred. There's all these things out there. And you start questioning a guy that runs a wrestling organization. The problem and the reason they behave like that is power. They have too much power and they turn into sick, degenerative people, just like the government. I am curious how they talk behind closed doors. Ugh. I don't know what this world's turning into, folks. I really don't know what this world's turning into. It's scary. I got a feeling with the way now since Pierre has come back to the House of Commons. I had some material this week. We've got good material coming up this next week. In terms of Pierre's dialect with Trudeau, he's really gunning for that spring election, and it's going to be real interesting to see if we get it. Um, a lot of people say no, but I still think it could come. I still think we might see a spring election. It's Mystical saying the current state of things doesn't help with chronic depression or anxiety. Well, imagine again, this is where I say the amount of people that it's affected throughout lockdowns as a result of those things. There is good news on the depression front. And again, I've got a story about it this week, talking about the delay of the amendments to medical assistance in death. The government has had to backtrack, and again, I'll have a story on that. So they've actually had to slate it off to 2027 at this point, which is good news for those who are clinically depressed. That easy outs may not be as accessible as we thought they might have been come March 17th. And on top of that, we also have a story about Justin Trudeau and his good old friend from the Waffen SS. Do you guys remember? Because, it wasn't that long ago. Sorry, my throat's really dry. Do you guys remember? I think it was October. It was October or November when Mr. Is it Yaroslav Hunka, the former SS Nazi who got the standing ovation in the House of Commons? $5 super chat from Sean. My goodness, thank you so much. You mentioned JT might have an ace up his sleeve for upcoming elections, and now I've learned he changed electoral reform. You can vote anywhere you want and mail your votes. So that's going to be interesting, and I'm going to get into that in a video at a later date. I appreciate the super chat. But what I wanted to talk about was this SS soldier. A lot of news outlets aren't covering this. If you remember Karina Gould standing up during the following days and saying, hey, listen, Anthony Rota invited the SS soldier to the House of Commons. We didn't know who he was. We didn't vet this man. We didn't know anything. Well, I have a story coming out this week that shows that not only did they know who this guy was, they invited him to a private event as a guest of the Prime Minister. You can't make this stuff up. The scandals are coming out for Trudeau, and when I see things like this starting to hit all of a sudden, where it's like, hey, here's a little nugget of more stuff about Trudeau, it starts to make me wonder if when you hear about his Liberal MPs starting to talk smack about him and starting to say they've had enough, that maybe they're the ones leaking this information, they're the ones bringing it up because they want an election, they want him gone, and of course he doesn't have the hubris. Or his hubris is too high for him to step down and leave the position. Why do I get a feeling the PMO knew of his past? He did. And we got a story about that. I don't want to ruin it, but come back this week. Check out that video. As I always mention in those videos, it's always important to like, share them out, comment. Even if you just put, here's my comment. Those things help us in the algorithm. Again, if you go back into our timeline from last week and look at my video about Danielle Smith's announcement of the new plans, usually a video has no trouble hitting its first 1,000 views within an hour of dropping it on YouTube. This video, I think after an hour, had 110 views or something. It got absolutely buried because YouTube doesn't like us talking about those things. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's always important to get that in. Get in your likes, get in your comments, share it out, get loud. That's how we know we're winning. I took no offense by having that video shut down because that tells me we're on the right track. All tractors matter. Yes. In fact, the French protesters got their demands met and packed up and left. I was so happy to see that. Trudeau's trying to do everything he can to destroy Canada's reputation and economy before they give him the boot. So he is, but I've also said that's my concern when we come into another election is where do we go next? What is the ace up his sleeve? Because any other prime minister would have walked away by now, and he isn't. And when you look at mail-in ballots, when you look at Dominion voting, when you look at all these other things, and I know the United States hates you saying that there's fraudulent practices at play, but we saw them on camera during the U.S. election. We seen in, what was it, Philadelphia, where people had been dragging votes out from under tables and putting them through the machines after voting had closed, all in favor of Joe Biden. Georgia's voting problems, Nevada's voting problems, key states where, it was razor thin. What do you think's going to happen in the next election? I sure hope it's not that. Because I'll tell you, the world is going to be okay even if Justin Trudeau were to win, because I don't think the Freedom Convoy would lack in comparison to the outrage that Justin Trudeau would see at his doorstep and the amount of Canadians that I think would light their torches, grab their pitchforks, and absolutely storm the gates if he was to pull off an election win, because we all know that it's virtually impossible at this point. You want to see an uprising? There will be an uprising if Justin Trudeau pulls election shenanigans. Dominion has a second headquarters in Toronto. Well, did you guys hear about the $150 million the federal government's going to give Toronto to build houses for asylum immigrants? We've got a story coming up about that this week as well. I think we're going to see a paradigm shift this year. I think people are going to start to get loud. I think that if you look at Pierre's aggressiveness over the last week, what I tend to look at and what I try to watch for are patterns. Patterns dictate a lot of things on how things are moving. You can usually, and anybody who looked at stocks, anybody who's looked at hedge funds or any kind of markets that knows about housing markets or strategical markets, you usually look for patterns. And what I've noticed with Pierre lately, especially, is that his channel, not only has he been in campaign mode all summer long and all winter break, but his YouTube channel has constantly been uploading content, more so than regular, which tells me that they're really pushing to get their message out. And why else would they be doing that if they weren't gearing up for an election? There are things that are talked about behind closed doors, and I think that we're starting to see the rumblings of a spring election. People keep saying it's not going to happen, but all signs are pointing at this point. Like during the summer when people were saying, are we going to see a fall election? I said no. I said there's no way. We're not going to see a fall election. It's not going to happen. I'm very convinced we're going to see some form of a spring election. And if not, it's going to be purely because of corruption. Did they get the money that will build houses, or did they get money for big shots to study it and tell it? So they said that $150 million was going to equivalent to 2,000 homes. I don't know what that necessarily means, but we'll see, I guess. We'll see. The never-ending funding just seems to just come out of nowhere. The federal government doesn't mind putting us further into debt to support people who want to, clinch onto our welfare system, who have no intentions of working, who don't bring any skills to this country, who don't bring any benefit to becoming Canadians. They just want to live off of our taxpayer money. They want to turn our country into where they left. And I say that not from a racial standpoint. I'm saying that because it's visible. You can actually see it in these cities, with the tent cities, with the drugs, with the defecation in the streets, with the crime rising, with thefts up. What is it? Pierre said 33% car thefts were up in Toronto, where all the immigrants are. Come on. I don't want to go on another rant because I had my rant earlier. It's it's not healthy. But I will close on good old Amnesty coming in. To check out the books at unacceptablefringebooks.com. Just a reminder again, for anybody who came late into the stream, the site is shutting down February 25th. Orders will start shipping tomorrow. So if you want to get your orders in this evening, they will be shipped out tomorrow. Get what you can while you can, because once inventory is gone from that site, that is it. I won't be signing any books any further than that. And as of February 25th, they will, whatever's left, will stay with me, and they won't be available for purchase any longer. The costs of operating unacceptablefringebooks.com is just greater than what we're turning out right now. And it was meant to be temporary for people who wanted another outlet to pick up content from us aside from Amazon. So grab them while you can. Don't forget, also head over to Straight Goods Clothing. You can see I'm wearing my Straight Goods sweater tonight, and boy, they had some great clothes. We gave some to Tamara on Friday. I'm sure she'll be posting pictures of herself in those, though I do not require that. I'm anxious to see how those turned out, because she did get designs that I haven't picked up yet. But hey, good old Straight Goods. You'll see our ads pop up this week for them. And thank you to everybody who jumped into the stream. Again, a reminder before we leave, streams are no longer on Sunday nights, ladies and gentlemen. We have now moved to Friday Night Fringe here on the channel, and all streams from now on will be starting Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Central here on the channel. Again, unless for some reason I have to miss a Friday, we'll do makeup streams on Sundays. Sundays will be reserved for makeup days. But from here on out, ladies and gentlemen, no more Sunday streams. Friday is where it's at. So join us here for Friday Night Fringe at 6 p.m. Pacific time this upcoming Friday. I'm looking forward to seeing you all here. Thank you to everybody who threw super chats tonight. Anybody who wants to become a member of the channel, Tamara Lich's book is sold out on my site right now, but I will be giving away one copy for the next 3 months of her book, Hold the Line, The Ballad of Tamara Lich, signed by Tamara, signed by myself. In order to get in on those draws, you must be a channel member. I almost said subscriber. You must be a channel member. And it's all you have to do to get in on those draws, as well as when Straight Goods starts selling my limited run monthly shirts. I will be giving one of those away to one lucky member every month as well. Again, in order to qualify for those draws, all you need to do is be a member of the channel. It's the best way to support us. So go over, click that member or the join button, and become a member of the channel today. It's as little as $5 a month. And again, it helps the channel for when YouTube censors us, and it's definitely appreciated. But what I appreciate more than anything is everybody coming out and checking out these live streams and liking the video, commenting. That's always free, and it helps us get out in the algorithm. So thank you to everybody who came out tonight. Thank you to everybody who's going to join us on Friday and watch our videos this week. I hope you guys enjoy the content that's coming your way, and I hope you have a safe week. If you're in Nova Scotia, stay safe and stay out of the snow. I'll catch you on Friday. You guys have a good week.